Yeah. And we will do some quick introductions if that works for everybody. I think I'm just going order of what's on my screen. So we'll start with Brent.
My name is Brent Kell. I'm CEO of Valley Immediate Care, a bunch of urgent cares in Southern Oregon, also chair of our local workforce development board.
Great. Welcome. Sherry?
Hi, I'm Sherry Dunn. I'm the chair of the WTDB, the state board. That's good.
Todd, you're next.
Oh, thanks. I didn't quite hear you.
Sorry.
I was a little bit distracted because my computer connection to the server hack just disappeared, so I can't really see anything. But anyway, Todd Nell, director of the State Workforce Board, and I co-staff this committee with Heather now, and it was Andrew who looks to be here as well.
Well, then we'll just move right on over. You're up next, Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Ficht. I'm the executive director of East Cascades Works. We're the local workforce board that serves along the 97 corridor, the 10 counties east of the Cascades.
And right next door is Andrew.
Well, thank you, Chris. I was thinking, I'm not really next door to Central Oregon. I am Andrew McGough, former staff to this committee. This will be my last committee meeting, I think. I was just sort of doing the handoff for Heather and Todd, but I'm the executive director of Work Systems, which is the workforce board that serves the city of Portland, Washington, and Multnomah counties.
So I'm sorry, Andrew, but you are my neighbor because you border me between Multnomah County and Wasco County or Hood River County.
Hood River, okay.
See, so
that's fair. That's fair.
Chris was right.
All right.
She knows her rural areas.
I do. And on my screen right now, you're next to each other. So, Paul.
Hey, this is Paul Brown. I'm president of Cinder, which is a tech staffing and recruiting company based in the Portland area. And I also am on the board for Work Systems.
Thank you. Susie?
Good afternoon, Susie Calhoun, Confederate Tribes Umatilla Indian Reservation in the great state of Eastern Oregon, and I work with our local workforce boards there. And I am the program manager for the Tribes Vocation Program.
Okay, super. And then Clay.
Clay Martin. I am staff support in the Office of Workforce Investments and help out where I can with the WTDB.
Thank you. And I'm Chris Latimer, co-chair of the committee and training and development director with Sniper Corporation. So thanks to everybody for taking time out of your busy day to join us. We're moving right along, and we're going to move on to public comment. Do we have anyone from the public for comment, Aaliyah? Do you know?
No one has submitted public comment to me. Nope.
Well, then we will move along. I'm assuming we haven't garnered the necessary attendees to take care of our minutes right now.
Now we're still missing two.
Okay. So Sherry, we're going to jump right on down to you, governor's letter.
Hey, hi. Is it possible to bring up the letter? Do you all have it? Thank you. Look at that. So just Johnny on the spot there, or Jane on the spot. Thank you. First of all, I really appreciate you all giving me some time to participate in today's meeting. I wanted to talk to you all about the letter and kind of talk about what it means going forward and my understanding of it. Just to give you some background, the state board, we have tried harder. We've been trying harder to connect with the governor's office and make sure that we are aligned with what the governor's needs are as a state board. I mean, we have this charge to advise and provide support, but it's not always felt clear how to do that. And, we have some regulatory things we have to do, but so Sarah Foster, the governor's representative, has been engaging regularly in meetings with us, myself and Todd, and sometimes myself, Venkat, who's the vice chair, and I and Todd. And one of the things that came up in the conversation was it would be helpful for us to know what is the priority for the governor. What could we do that would be of value to the governor? And I did talk to Sarah about the fact that I felt that the WTDB had been an incubator for some of the really innovative things that have happened in the state. And that, our membership along with the state, the local boards have really moved the ball forward in a lot of ways, beyond just the limitations of what, let's say, the WIOA Act says we are to do. So, I've been trying to give the governor better insight into who we are and what we do. And at some point, we received this letter from the governor's office, from Sarah. It is not a letter we had any hand in crafting. I do want to make that clear. We had zero hand in crafting this. It was a bit of a surprise to myself as the chair and to Venkat. And from what I understand of the letter, well, I mean, just being very transparent with you, I have felt there is some opaqueness and a little bit of people not seeing clearly the role of the board, the innovation of the board, and even though I tried to clear that up, I feel like we still ended up in a certain space. And so the space we ended up in with this letter is, from what I have understood, is that the governor has laid out in this letter ways that the board can show its value to the governor. I personally feel like the board has shown its value over the years, but these are ways the board can show its value. So, how this letter came to be and who helped design it is not something I know. But what I can tell you is that in reading the letter, um, it sounds to me that the governor would like the board to focus fairly laser-like on reporting systems and associated metrics, and that we should prioritize performance and accountability, as you see there, and that it says while WIOA compliance and participation in workforce programs are important indicators of success, the WTDB should also set and track metrics that show how our workforce programs improve lives of Oregonians. There's a couple other points in the letter, but basically what we gathered from this letter is that the governor is asking the state board to lead in establishing and standing up these metrics and accountability, and being a source from which the governor can pull and count on information about the workforce system. Not the broader system necessarily, but the system that we all operate in. And so that is kind of our goal. And so our goal is to come up with a committee that will focus on this element, the singular element really, of the governor's letter and how we can execute that. So what does it mean for the kick? I think, there's all these competing things. I mean, the kick is a committee of the WTDB, but it also exists as an imperative that was put out there as wanting to have continuous improvement across the system. The biannual assessment that the kick does is something that is very important, and I think there's a way for this committee, this metrics committee, to come together with the KIC and work together. If we think about, a race where multiple people are touching the baton, and at a certain point in the race, people hand off the baton to someone else, and then someone else carries it this distance. I think that is the way we might want to think about this. There is a meeting, I think it's next week, that the governor's office has convened. It is, again, we did not have any hand in designing or planning this meeting. But the letter was sent out to folks, and the letter it's workforce system leaders. So I do believe there's representation from the local boards. I don't have the list, but I think Todd does. And the goal of this meeting, it says, is to provide clarity and direction outlined in the letter and expectations on how to engage in the work, which is being led by the WTDB. And says, while the board is planning to finish their strategic planning, which we have done, leadership is recommending that the board stand up a small work group to identify potential performance metrics for WIOA programs. So that is where we are. We've been given a charge. Again, a charge that we did not help design, and that we have to figure out how to execute. And that's kind of where we are. So, I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have, but I can't tell you more than what I know. So, yes, Heather.
I was wondering, what are your thoughts about leveraging the KIC to support that work group work? I mean, I think we would have to look at membership, because probably we would really, if it's all those titles, they need to have someone represented from them. So maybe this is the wrong group for that, but I just wondered if you had thoughts, or is that kind of something you guys are going to think through next week when you meet?
Yeah, that will likely be something that comes up in the meeting. And like I said earlier, I think of it more like a baton passing. There is certain elements that the KIC does, and then there'll be certain elements that this work group does. And that really is to be in alignment with what she asked in the letter. And clearly what they're asking in the meeting is for us to change our focus and to focus in this very specific way. And for us as the WTDB to do that, we have to do this, so it's a little tricky. Brent?
Yeah, this has always been the holy grail for me, is getting some wage and payroll data downstream of some of our programs, our participants. From your perspective, this letter sounds like that might be possible.
It sounds like it's definitely what they want. Now, as Todd and Clay can attest, it's not always for us to get that information. And so what I hope to bring up in this meeting next week is, if you are charging us with doing this and you are asking us to provide this information, who's going to help us get agencies to give us data that we ask for? So yes, I think that would be great data. I think that's a perfect example of the type of data that we could give, and we could cross-reference with other things we get. The difficulty has been, we don't have any kind of, we're kind of like the Supreme Court at this point. We don't have a police force to enforce our orders, like we don't have any way to make it happen other than through requesting. So that'll definitely be something I will bring up at the meeting next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
I just think that's a really accurate assessment too, Sherry. And I know you've been at this table at the WTDB forever. And I remember the first iteration of the KIC that Todd, was convening years and years ago, and we could never get this information from any of the state agencies. So it's like, you're right. It's like, okay, then make them. Make them tell us.
Yes, it is something we talk to Sarah about, what is our internal capacity? Do we get a staff like, how do we do this? And so that's something I will bring up again next week. Yep. Other questions or thoughts? from our perspective, we respect and support the kick and the recommendations you all have provided and the hard work you have put into it. And as you know, the WTDB has, since COVID, I think a little before COVID, really tried to be flexible and nimble and adapt to the situations. And me personally, I see a lot of things that exist now on the state level as things that had their proving ground and testing ground and working through the WTDB. But I don't know if other people always get that idea. And so as a result, the WTDB is kind of a little bit back in square one, which is helping this governor see the WTDB's values in the way that she's requesting. So that's kind of where I'm at. Todd, do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, I think you did a great job, Sherry. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm interested and excited to have that meeting next week. I think it's Monday, with Sarah Foster, to better understand what she envisions in terms of the different programs, titles. To your point, Heather, I think all of sort of the key titles 1, 2, 3, 4 are going to be a part of that meeting, along with, I guess, to your point, it looks like it's going to be Kim. I thought it was Heather Desart that I saw on the invite list, but maybe Kim's going to pop in there in lieu of her or with her. I'm not
because
sure.
she's the chair, so maybe they picked her.
Yeah,
I just
that's
thought
what
that
I
they
was
were picking who
thinking.
was on the state board.
Yeah,
but, okay.
that's what I was thinking, chair of OWP. But I look for that to give us a bit more clarity. I did talk with Kurt Tackman. And for those of you who don't know who Kurt Tackman's the deputy director over at the Office of Workforce Investments, where Aaliyah and Clay and I are. And he's sort of the resident policy wonky expert around Title I. And I had a conversation with him over the last few weeks when we've been in the office to sort of pick his brain in terms of what he would see as a reasonable membership of that task force committee, whatever we end up calling it. So he's already thinking about who ought to be a part of it. And the other thing that we talked about with him and one other person in the WorkSource Oregon system on this reporting that's called out in the governor's letter is that there have been reporting mechanisms years ago that were either started or already in place that are sort of similar to this. So I don't bring that up to say, we did it and we stopped and we're going back to what we were doing. It's just that there is institutional knowledge back several years that other agencies, other titles may have access to that will help us sort of pull this together maybe a little bit more quickly than otherwise. It's not like we're starting from scratch completely. The only other thing I wanted to mention too, Sherry, is that we just recently finished up our 2025-2026 strategic plan. And this work is called out in that strategic plan. The metrics task force is and standing that up to deliver on this data gathering and performance reporting is one of the deliverables. So to the performance measures that are touched on in the governor's letter, those, along with any other metrics that are pertinent, will go into that metrics task force, be discussed, and be a part of the work that they produce. So, and I know, looks like Andrew has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I mean, I don't think this has to be as complicated or controversial as sometimes we make it. All of the programs that fit under Oregon's definition of a public system regularly report to the feds. I think it would be pretty good just to get, you don't have to create new data. It's like, what data are you already producing, and what are the outcomes and who are you serving? And I think that having that kind of transparency could lead to the next level kinds of questions. Oh, you don't collect this or you collect that. So I think this data all exists. The question is, it doesn't exist in one spot where we can sort
Right.
of look at it comprehensively and go from there. But I think it should be relatively easy for all of these agencies to produce that baseline data that they have to report on a quarterly basis to the feds.
And
Yeah.
this was a big part of the conversation I had with Kurt, Andrews. So I don't know that Kurt would say it would be easy.
Yeah, you would
But
think it
we
would
were
be
thinking the same
easy.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you would think it would be easy because you're right, they have the data and yet, it's not that the WTDB folks have not tried. It's not like people haven't tried to get the data. So is it a coordination? Is it just, I don't want to give it to them? Like, I don't know what it, like, where is the blockage? That's the question. Yeah, Heather, I'm sorry.
Well, and I think you're spot on, but I also think it's not, we don't know disaggregated, like who's co-enrolled. So it's really hard to tell a system story when our data doesn't communicate. So someone could be getting services from my subcontractor and also be enrolled in Voc Rehab. We have no idea because our systems don't talk. So I think what Andrew's pointing out is like every agency can share their quarterly performance data, but how meaningful is it if we can't tell like who's in the denominator? Who are these people? Is it the same person? Do we have the same person being served by 10 different funding streams and then these people aren't being served by anybody? Like that's, I think, the devil in the details there that
Well, but you have to
makes it
start somewhere.
limited. I agree.
think,
I agree.
You got to start somewhere.
And
it's like,
they all
what are you
have
producing?
federally negotiated performance that they have to report.
Mhm.
So let's hear it.
Yeah, and it's not that we, don't want to do that. It's just that we want, I think part of the thing we're asking the governor's office to do is in conjunction with this letter to make clear to folks that a consequence of this is that this has to happen. And then to Heather's point, there is this next step, which is the disaggregation and aggregation of data that whose job is that, so that's the question. I mean, to your point, yes, we would just getting the baseline data would be helpful. How many people, but then to Heather's point, there's this cross and there's this fluidity, and how do we, that's all. It's yes, Andrew.
I think Paul had his hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Paul.
I didn't see you.
No worries. Sherry, I appreciate the honesty and the transparency that you offered when you were reviewing the contents of the letter. I've been on the kick now for about 2 years. I remember you were on WTDB many years longer than that. Several people on this call have been working in this space for many, many years. Here we are, more than 2 years into the governor's term before we've had any meaningful interaction with regard to what their priorities are or direction we should be going. And I'm not asking anybody to say anything that they would be uncomfortable being on record. So I'll speak for it since I don't have anything to risk and say, this is very disheartening. To the idea that this is the first time that we get direction from the governor is basically like, everybody settle down and just give me some reports and I'll review them at some point in the future, when there's really from where I sit, no sign that the governor is going to prioritize workforce related activities in the remaining year and a half, especially in light of all of the attacks that we're seeing from federal level. Like this just feels really disconnected from the work. From your perspective, I guess, as a WTDB, just so I can ask a question instead of just complaining about something. I mean, do you envision a significant redesign of how the WTDB is even going to operate in the state going forward? And is there really merit in the KIC existing separately at this point? I mean, we're a report generation engine, as now apparently you are. So but it just feels like a lot of duplication of a lot of very busy people's time that might not. Anyway, I'll stop. You know where I'm going with this.
Well, as far as any kind of redesign of the WTDB, I don't think so. I don't anticipate that. Actually, a lot of that has to do with the federal situation. Nobody wants to do anything that's going to draw any attention or require approval, or, so that's not going to happen. And as it relates to the other part, I mean, I am, I am, I have worked hard as when I was the vice chair, but it's definitely now as the chair. I've only been the chair for a couple months, I think. Feels like forever. But to build this relationship, and I pushed to get clarity, and I wanted to get that clarity. What do you want? You know, what do you need? And to your point, I think it speaks to the fact that we haven't always had that relationship that we kind of are here, but then also there's not always a direct line of communication, of understanding our work. I think sometimes it's mediated through others, and that's hard to overcome. And so it does feel a little bit like, oh, you're starting, here's some reports, you're starting back. Whereas I feel the WTDB over these last few years has moved to a more innovative incubator kind of uh, enterprise that has done some great things, not the least of which is helping to incubate Future Ready. I do think there is something to gain in getting a hold of and having, even as Andrew says, strong baseline metrics compiled in a way that we can deploy and utilize. I do think there's value in that. And I don't think it's just one group's burden to bear. I think there's a way for us to work with this new committee as well as the KIC to achieve these goals, and then be able to go back and say, hey, you gave us this letter, you told us to do this thing, and X and Y and Z is not happening, and we need X and Y and Z to happen. Like, it gives us, some leverage there. So I think ultimately there is value in that. Andrew?
Yeah, I appreciate all that you're saying, Sherry. And I do think it is about clarity on what's expected of the various levels of the system. And, I was like going through the letter, and it clearly directs the WTDB to establish this metric. And so that, to me, implies she wants the WTDB to get this data and then establish the metric. So I would take that as implicit direction to her department heads who work for her to help the WTDB do that. I would take that statement and say, governor's pretty clear here. You need to give us the data, because I think that's been the challenge for many, many years. I mean, I'm still trying to get data out locally out of stuff. And then the other thing I was going to say too is that I think there's opportunity here. And by the way, the KIC is established in state statute. So, I mean, it's just not going to go away unless someone's. But the other thing is, this is a huge opportunity, in my opinion, because it is about clarifying roles and responsibilities and how we work together. And I think this is more about the state board and local boards and how we work together to support our shared goals and responsibilities. Because in my mind, it's like we need the data just like the state board needs the data, and we can be those sort of eyes and ears at the regional level to feed up to the state board to do that additional analysis of what's going on across the state, to sort of augment what the state board is looking for in terms of that broader statewide perspective, and just sort of creating that alignment between the state and local boards. That to me is the massive sort of opportunity here, because then we've got a delivery mechanism to make not just statewide changes, but regional changes as well, in alignment with broader statewide goals. So, to me, this is a big opportunity to get that role clarity and authority that we need to get the data and the information to ultimately influence the provision of services, both at the state level and the regional level. And I think it's going to be messy for a while, but I would love to see, and again, I'm leaving. So, but I think the kick is in a really good spot to be supportive of the state board and getting that alignment to move some of this change forward. So.
Well, thank you. And I do want to see the opportunity here. And I do think there is that. I do think Paul's caution is real, however, that we not be spinning our wheels and providing data that nobody's going to look at or do anything about. So, those are just concerns that are real. And of course, there's a time limit for governors. I mean, we assume we'll see what happens, but that being said, clearly what we have here is a situation where there will be, and yes, the kick exists by statute, but it's also been said to me by Sarah that, well, the kick is part of the WTDB. It's sort of, so it's also part of the WTDB. And so the WTDB in its role is to coordinate these entities like a bit of a, I guess, a conductor of a orchestra. And so our role is to come up with this other piece of it and then figure out how to integrate in or connect with or work in partnership with these committees, including the kick, to achieve these goals. So that, that's kind of where we're at. And I think we'll have even more clarity by hopefully next week in the meeting. But good insight and thoughts and questions for me to take to that meeting, and I will. Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect.
All right.
Thank you,
I'm sorry.
Sharon.
I hope I haven't dominated your meeting too long.
No, we're like right on the minute. You're right on the minute, Sherry.
Okay.
So good job. We'll look forward to hearing more following the meeting next week. All I can say is it's deja vu all over again. I feel badly that this conversation has been going on for 20 years. And maybe finally, Andrew, we're going to get some traction and get some data that we can share and help us improve our system. So awesome.
Right.
Thanks again,
Thank
Sherry,
you.
for all of your
I'll take my leave. Thank you very much. All right.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Sharon.
rest of your day. Todd, I'm going to toss it over to you to talk about Salem workforce convening.
Ooh. Yeah. It's no surprise for the folks that have been involved in the kick work now for 2 years, Paul, to your point, that there's been a level of frustration in terms of that engagement from the governor's office and the workforce policy advisor. I wanted to, commend Sherry on what she's done in short order. I think in large part, in response to hearing that from me about the kick, and then also on the part of other efforts that we have going on with the Workforce and Talent Development Board to really be intentional about building a relationship with Sarah Foster. And, Sarah kept telling us, just wait until session winds down a little bit, and then I promise I'll be back with you. She finally did. And yes, to Sherry's comments and a bit about what you said, Brent, yeah, it was, or Paul, it was surprising to many of us. But at the same time, there was some engagement there. So in that same vein of engagement with the governor's office, and I'll toss in the legislature, since we've sort of been on pause or hiatus on these meetings, the co-chairs, Andrew, Heather, and myself have continued to meet off and on and brainstorm and conceive of, potential ideas to help with engagement. And I think it was Kaylin, if I remember right, Chris, who first sort of tossed the idea out with us. And that was to try and have a convening with legislators in Salem to talk about what's happening. Oh, I remember now. It was a result of what was happening on the national level and potential reductions in funding, which, oh, by the way, did happen to varying degrees. But at the state, it happened where WEOM funding went down about 10% across the board. The formula that goes out to local boards impacted them sometimes a little bit less than that, sometimes a bit more than that. But overall, that is still in play. And of course, there's other concerns that we don't know about at the state level, but at the regional and local level, the local workforce boards do, their members do. And so Kaylin suggested this, and I sort of took the ball and ran with it, along with Chris and Kaylin as they were able, and reached out to Representative Hai Pham, who is on the State Workforce Board, and sort of tossed the idea his way. He really liked it, and we have met several times, and are thinking of bringing together some federal legislators, some state legislators, the local workforce board members, and all the WTDB members. Sometime it looks like the week of August 18th or the week of August 25th, yet to be determined. We should know pretty soon. But the notion here is to bring together all these various partners and have an opportunity to network, begin to build relationships in the morning, go from like 9 to 1. I think Heather and Andrew might be willing to help feed everybody so they're not grumpy as we talk through all these challenges yet opportunities that exist across the 36 counties in the state, to really be able to dig in and listen and share information, listen to what's happening at the federal level from legislators, listen to what's happening with state legislators who are, workforce development, education, and training advocates. And then importantly, provide opportunity for them to hear from you all in terms of what's happening on the ground in the various regions and local communities around the state. So then, we've got a draft agenda, which I shared with Heather and Andrew this morning. It's not by any means finalized, but there's a couple of ideas that are in play. A panel of each of the federal legislators and then the state legislators, and then either a large group discussion Q&A around those challenges and opportunities, and or breakout discussions that may tie back to the WTDB strategic plan. Not quite sure yet, but one of the big sort of goals here, and this was Rep. Pham's idea, and agency leadership, including Ben Cannon at the HEC, is in support of this idea, which is that this is all sort of intended to inform the next legislative session in terms of potential ledge concepts and bills around workforce education and training. The other thing Rep. Pham has said is that he knows the governor. He will try his hardest to get the governor to be able to attend, given her, schedule. So I think all that to say, more to come. We think we'll know more by the first to middle of July, because session will have ended, and folks will have a little bit, more time to really dig into this. But I do think it also, again, shows that we're making headway in terms of engagement with the legislators, both at the state and federal level. Another thing Sherry did was reach out to Janelle Bynum. She's a personal friend of hers, and asked her if she would be interested in attending. And Janelle responded yes. So I've reached out and put in a formal request to her staff people. But yeah, just wanted to share that. I think it's a great opportunity to think about ways we can take the work of the KIC and its assessments, the work of the WTDB and our callouts in our strategic plan, and the governor's letter, and convene leadership and workforce development from around the state to have greater impact and potentially have that impact legislatively. So I think I just wanted to share that and then open it up to any discussion, comments, feedback you all have regarding that event.
Did you want to maybe share the draft agenda? I thought that was helpful context.
Sure, I can do. Well, I think I can. Let me see if my computer's still. So can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah, so 9:30 to 1 start, coffee, tea, networking, as I had said. Rep Fam is really excited about this. He wants to lead it as both a representative and a WTDB member. So welcome and opening remarks from him, followed by vision and goals for the day, which would include some highlights from our recently completed two-page strategic plan. And then we'd shift into a panel. You can see some placeholders here for federal legislators, including Bynum, Bonamici, Merkley, and maybe others, not really sure. We do know that if we miss getting them by mid to late August, we're not going to get them back because they'll be back in DC come September. And then we'd shift to another panel moderated that would include Rep Fam, Senator Solman, and he's got some other ideas of colleagues in the state legislature that he wants to bring into the fray. I don't know which ones would make it to be actual panel members and or participate, just as attendees. Well, not just as attendees, but as attendees. So more to come from him on that. But he did say that he wanted the governor to come. So he knows her, I guess. They've been friends for quite some time. So he's going to work on that as well. And then we'll leave space for about an hour to talk about, what the possibilities are and what potential solutions, including legislatively and investment wise. And then close out with Rep Fam and Sherry. So what do folks think of that?
Chris, you're muted.
Yeah. And then my mouse doesn't want to work. My left button doesn't work. I think the most important thing for me on this agenda would be that 11:45 to 12:45 time and having really skilled facilitation so that we're taking what we've heard, what we've learned, what we're bringing from whatever space we're in to this event, and we're able to have good, really meaningful conversation and extract really good, meaningful input out of that discussion. Because, just coming together to hear a bunch of people talk doesn't interest me at all.
So synthesize that real time with the facilitation and then narrow it down to a handful of priorities that folks are really, agreeable to. And then with those, move that forward kind of an approach, Chris. Yeah,
I think so. Andrew?
Any other ideas? Oh, Andrew.
Yeah, just some food for thought. My guess is by that time, we're going to know where we stand with the federal government, whether it's the big, beautiful bill has moved forward, or we're going to be in some ongoing conversation around continuing resolution. My thought is, in the very least, it would be a very good opportunity. I mean, if the big, beautiful bill, the Make America Skilled Again passes, that's going to create a major inflection point for how Oregon approaches workforce development. So I think we should try and provide the committee some preparatory information in the event that that bill passes, because it consolidates about 11 programs. It cuts the funding in half. A lot of things are going to go away.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
So in my mind, this could be a huge opportunity to sort of have that conversation about where do we go from here, and help to share some of the consequences, or the opportunity, more consequence than it is opportunity, I think. And because we're going to have to lean on the state if the feds are getting out of the game, and because most of the money will come as a block grant. So then having the executive of the state or some representation from the executive office of the state will be important, because they will have a lot more discretion about how this stuff works in the future. So, I don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. And if we're in the world of a continuing resolution, that's still a pretty tenuous place to be. And I think it will be top of mind to help share the implications of that with our elected officials. So I think to your point, Chris, I think we can be pretty explicit about some of the challenges that are faced both at the state level and the local level if some of these changes come to be.
Yep. Very reasonable. Right. Anything else? Todd, thanks for all the legwork. I appreciate that you give Caitlin and I some credit, but you've done all the work, all the lifts on this.
Yeah, no worries at all. Happy to do it. I'm kind of excited. Rep Fam is getting excited about it as well. And as he attested to, he's going to have more time to sort of devote to it in about 2 weeks, but or not even 2 weeks, a week. We are sort of targeting the Chemeketa Center for Business and Industry here in Salem. And oh, by the way, that's where Chris Parker Yanez has got her office. We've had events there previously, so it's got good space, assuming they have availability at the right time. So kind of got that narrowed down, and I would just say more to come, and we'll be happy to spread the news as it becomes available. One of the obvious first steps is we've got a draft invite that I sent over to Rep Fam's office yesterday that accompanied the agenda, and some others sort of run as show notes. I haven't heard back from them. I don't expect to, given where they are in session, but yeah, once they weigh in on that invite, we'll get that invite distributed out to folks so people can get it in the calendar. As Heather said this morning, August is a pretty tricky month, but there was just no way we could get it done even in late July, given the tight turnaround time. So fingers are crossed. I'll keep being diligent about trying to make it happen, and hopefully we can see it to fruition.
All right. Thanks for all your work. Right. I don't believe we have a quorum yet, so we're going to have to carry those minutes forward yet again. Right. Any closing thoughts? Anyone have anything good of the order before we wrap up for today? Right. Well, I'll just say thank you again, everybody, for taking time to be here, to have these conversations, and do the lifting that you're doing wherever you're at. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.